Okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the show. Welcome, welcome. And we're back again. It is 10 a.m. Eastern Time. You are on the Goods Fam on Twitch. This is Philly Good, and I'll be showing you the MPCX again today. What we'll be looking at is chapter 17 of the MPC Bible, Building Velocity Sensitive Drum Kits. And it appears the cameras are all working today, so glad to say that we'll be able to actually put on the stream that we meant to do. Yesterday we had some technical issues. If you were here, I apologize, but if you're checking it out today, it should be a little more interesting. And let's see if you can follow, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when my next stream is happening. Unfortunately, tomorrow, Saturday, and also Sunday, I most likely will not, well, tomorrow definitely, Sunday maybe not, will be doing a stream, probably not till Monday. I'll be away for a couple days, but we'll resume Monday, and with Monday's episode, I think I'll just do making a random beat, and then Tuesday we'll get back into everything else. All right, so let's get everything started, and the speakers are all set up. Okay. Alright, and please jump in the chat if you're here. I'd like to get at least 5 people in the chat. That's my goal. If we can get 5 people chatting, that would be amazing. Alright, so creating randomness in your sequences. Now, throughout the course, we've come across a number of ways to add an element of randomness to our samples, such as the use of random pad layers to play back random dynamic versions of a sample, the randomize feature, which randomly changes certain parameters of a pad, such as attack, pitch, and offset, as well as modulation techniques using LFO. But so far, when it comes to sequences, these have been static. They always have pre-recorded content that will only change if we actively choose to edit or re-record the sequence. If there's a kick program to play at 001.01.000, then the sequence will always play that kick at 001.01.000. To add some more dynamic variety to the actual events in our sequences, we can use probability. So I'm going to load up the project we were working on previously. Let's see if I can get that. So it's probably, I'm guessing, the finger kit. We'll load up the finger kit. We'll assume that's what we were working on. So what they want is going to sequence 3 probability. Yeah, okay, so we're on the right track here. If you have the MPC Bible and the tutorial files, you can go into chapter 17, the folder chapter 17, and it'll have this in there, the fingerkit.xpm or whatever it is, and just go to sequence 3 and you'll see probability. And in the current FingerKit project, they programmed a 2-bar break featuring a grimy version of the FingerKit that we had been using previously in the tutorial. So we're gonna hit play start. Here, I'm gonna get the volume up a little. So yeah, it's a simple boom bap beat with a 1/16 straight hi-hat pattern. Go to the grid view and make sure the closed hi-hats on pad A07 are all selected. So you can either hit pad A07 and that'll do it. It'll select them all. Unless you change the default grid view settings, you can change them back using the gear icon at the top right of the screen. And then expand the automation lane right there and select probability. So the blue lines here represent the probability that a note will play. By default, all events in a track have a probability of 100%. So for example, they'll always play. Select the pencil tool and draw downwards. So all the selected pads A07 hi-hats are given a probability of around 50%. That looks about 50%, I don't know. Now if you hit play start, you get to hear how it sounds. That sounds pretty dope. As you let the sequence loop several times, you should hear that the hi-hat pattern is never exactly the same. It's continually changing simply because each hi-hat has a 1 in 2 chance of actually playing. Sometimes it plays and sometimes it doesn't. You've now created a sequence that is never static and never fully predictable, from the perspective of hi-hats at least. So they have their version. If you go to sequence 4, probability 50 PC, and then if you select sequence 5, probability quarter note, this is almost the same as the previous sequence, but this time they set the hi-hats on each quarter note to have a probability of 100%, which ensures that we are guaranteed a hi-hat exactly on each beat, while the remaining hi-hats remain randomized. To set the probability for an individual event, you can use the select tool to select the event, and then use the pencil tool to draw the new probability. However, grid view can get a little cumbersome when there's a few events occupying similar positions on the timeline. and you'll probably find it easier to use list view to edit individual probabilities. The probability of an event is displayed in the prob column. So we're going to go to list view. And then the prob column is right there. And it can be changed by single tapping and turning the data wheel. So sequence 6, probability R and D symbols, introduces a crash symbol on pad A04 at the start of each bar. One with a probability of 39% and the other with a probability of 59%. I'm just going to listen to it. Wow, okay. So you can hear sometimes it plays it and sometimes it doesn't. It's really neat. So additionally, they also set up pad A11 with a closed hat on layer 1 and an open hat on layer 2, with the entire pad set to random layer playback. They then inserted this event as the last 1/16th event in each bar with a probability of 100%. So while the event always plays with a probability of 100%, it has a 50% chance of playing either an open hat or a closed hat. So this is a nice way to combine MIDI probability and random pad layer playback. So now we're going to select sequence 7, random bass notes. This sequence has an added bass line on track 2, and here they set a lower probability. Somebody's at the door. They set a lower probability on every fourth bass note to produce a subtle random change to the bass line. So I'll just play that and see what it sounds like. Wow, cool. I see that right there they have like a 39% and then a 93% on pad A07. Yeah, it's pretty neat how you can mess with the randomization by changing that probability value. So with the first 3 notes always playing 100%, you get a stable mix of predictability and randomness. So see how on the bass here they have the first 3 rows at 100% and the 4th note at 38%, and then the next 3 notes 100%, and then 45%, and they continue to do that all the way through. So each 4th note has a random effect to it. Very neat. Learn something new every day. Alright, so just want to say thank you to everybody that's watching. Really means a lot to me. If you could please jump in the chat and just say anything at all, and that would be great. Put an emoji or whatever you want. I'm just trying to get 5 people in the chat. That's my goal for today, so I would really super appreciate it if you could help support me by helping me reach that goal. All right, so drum kit MIDI note mapping. So just like the keys on a MIDI keyboard, each pad in an MPC drum program is assigned its own unique MIDI note. Since MPC 2.11, the MIDI note mapping for all newly created drum programs is called chromatic C1. So it's chromatic, just like a keyboard, but it begins on C1, MIDI note 36, instead of C2, MIDI note 0. This means pad A01 is assigned to MIDI note C1, 36, pad A02, 38, and so on, chromatically along the pads. When we get to MIDI note 127, the last note in the MIDI scale, which is a note G8, which is on pad F12. We go back to MIDI note 0 and populate the rest of the pads chromatically from 0 to 35. Why start with C1 on pad A01 and not C2 like key group programs? Well, it's most likely having the MPC follow other popular drum machines, controllers, and sampler defaults such as machine and the pads and controllers like the Arturia MinLab. Plus, as we'll see in a bit, this type of MIDI note range, 36 onwards, is also used with general MIDI GM drum mapping. It's not always been this simple. Until MPC 2.10, the MPC used the legacy MPC MIDI note layout, which was just plain weird and didn't play very nicely on keyboards, as it wasn't remotely chromatic. There's no real need to go into this now, and the default layout is a chromatic C1. But that said, if you ever do find yourself loading an old MPC kit, which causes a headache on your external controller, you can easily remap the MIDI notes on your pads. With the legacy kit loaded and assigned to a track, go to Main, hit the with the legacy kit loaded. Oop, wait. Legacy kit? What? Legacy kit? I don't know what they're talking about. Was it on the bass, maybe? I thought I turned down the volume. Sorry about that, folks. Always remember to turn your phone on silent whenever you're doing a stream. Unless you want to get called. Alright. I'll call them back later. Alright. So what were we doing? We're looking for the legacy kit that they're talking about. With the legacy kit loaded and assigned to a track, I don't know what they're talking about. Finger kit chromatic. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not following what they're trying to say here, but let's say in Main, hit the program row pencil icon and select edit pad note map. This brings up the Edit Pad MIDI note map screen. So here you can change the note mapping for each individual pad. Simply hit the pad you wish to change and enter the new MIDI note number under MIDI note. So we'll look at this in the next section. To just convert your kit to a simple chromatic C1, just press the chromatic C1 button. I see. Wow. That's it. Or if you prefer, press the chromatic C2 to change to a key group style mapping starting on MIDI note 0. Okay, I've never really knew that. Excuse me. If you have a, okay, so auto updating associated MIDI events. If you have a pre-MPC 2.11 kit, which has been previously used to record tracks in a project, it's vital that you load that project into memory before changing the note mapping of that kit. This way the MPC sequencer tracks and it will automatically update all the MIDI note and pad references accordingly. You'll be triggering the wrong pads. Okay, it's worth remembering that while you are changing the underlying MIDI note mapping for your kit, the physical layout of the actual MPC pads remains unchanged. So you can carry on playing the kit via pads with no change to your preferred finger drumming pad layout at all. Wow, okay. We'll probably come back to this later on. I imagine they were very brief about it there, and they did mention we'll get back into it later, so I'm sure they'll explain it in a little more detail. Is probably just to let you know that it does exist, but we'll probably play with it a bit later on. All right, now GM mapping. The General MIDI GM drum map is a traditional standardized MIDI note numbering for MIDI drum kits, where each instrument is assigned a specific MIDI note number. For example, a bass drum is note 36, a side stick is note 37, an acoustic snare is note 38. So, for example, they have a list of the main drum mappings, notes 60 to 87, and they're all percussion instruments. So they have it laid out here in the MPC Bible. They have a row 59, and then the notes that correspond to those keys in the next column. So it starts at B0 and then C1, C sharp 1, D1, E flat 1, E1, and it goes all the way through, all the way to the 59th key, which is a B2. And each one of those corresponds to a percussion instrument, so they have another drum column to show which percussion instrument is assigned to those keys and those notes as well. So it goes through them all: acoustic bass drum, side stick, acoustic snare, hand clap, electric snare, low floor tom, closed hi-hat, high floor tom, pedal hi-hat, low tom, open hi-hat, low mid tom, high mid tom, crash cymbal 1, high tom, ride cymbal 1, Chinese cymbal, ride bell, tambourine, splash cymbal, cowbell, more cowbell, crash cymbal 2, vibra slap, and ride cymbal 2. So Many commercially available MIDI files which contain drum tracks will often use GM drum mapping for all drum tracks within them. So if you give your MPC drum kits an underlying GM mapping, they'll be instantly compatible with most standardized MIDI files from third parties. The problem is that many drum kits contain sounds that have no obvious match in the above mapping list. For example, what MIDI note should we assign our ghost note articulations? Typically, creators of more complex GM drum kits will use a modified GM layout where the core drum sounds perfectly match the standard GM notes, while the more unusual articulations use a closest match. Take, for example, the available hi-hat articulations in the standard thing. 42 is a closed hi-hat, 44 is a pedal hi-hat, and 46 is an open hi-hat. Our current kit contains 2 open hi-hats and 2 distinct closed hi-hats, pads A07 and A03. But no pedal hat. So one option is to just assign that spare closed hat to the pedal hat MIDI number 44 and create a custom GM assignment for the second hi-hat outside the normal GM range, typically from MIDI note 88 onwards. Here they've just renumbered the pads in use with the main drum hits given the obvious MIDI note mapping and secondary hits given spare alternatives. The original GM articulations are shown in brackets. So they have, again, the 3 columns, pad column, note column, and the drum column. So the A01 pad corresponds to the note B0, which was the key 35. And that corresponded originally to the acoustic bass drum, but now it's the ghost kick. A02, which is E1 note, which was originally the 40 key and labeled as an electric snare, now has the main snare too. And it goes on to have the A03 as an A flat 1. The 44 was originally the pedal hi-hat, it's now closed hat 2. A04 would be the C sharp 2 on the 49th key, which was the crash cymbal 1 label, but now has just a crash. A05 is C1, the 36th key, which was originally a bass drum, which is now a kick. A06 is a D1 note on the 38th key, which was originally labeled acoustic snare. It's now the main snare. A07 is a note of an F sharp 1 on the 42nd key, originally labeled the closed hi-hat, now has a closed hat 1. A08, the B flat 1 note into it, and the A12, which is an E5 note, the 88th key, originally labeled outside GM range, now has an open hat 2 assigned to it. So ultimately, you'll no doubt find that some GM MIDI files will work better than others, and you may have to edit your kit to match any third-party MIDI sequences you might want to use, or edit those sequences to match your kit. You can load fingerkit gm.xpj from your MPC Bible tutorial files, chapter 17. Where is chapter 17? Right at the bottom. Building velocity sensitive kits. Fingerkit gm.xpj. We'll load that up. It'll replace everything. Sure. No problem. So after that's loaded up, that project for the GM version of the kit and the sequences, you can also grab all the individual kits using or used in this chapter from the kits folder for this chapter. Okay. Grab all the individual kits. it looks like most of them are already loaded up in there. So got the finger kit chromatic, finger kit GM, and the finger kit grime. All these different programs, all these kits. All right. Whoa. I just hit a button there. Sorry, guys. Okay. I guess they just wanted us to... Alright, so that's it. So we've finished that chapter. We're now on chapter 18, Dynamic Tempo Manipulation. So if you could please jump in the chat. I'm going to do so right now. And just say hello. If you're here and watching live on Twitch, please jump in the chat. If you're chatting anywhere else, please jump in there as well. It's all appreciated, and I will see the chat later. I don't have all of the chats loaded up on my screen. I will eventually get set up like that, but I'm not organized enough yet to have all that set up properly. So let's get into Twitch, and we'll get into the stream manager here. So hey Annie, hey guys, hey Andrew. I'm glad you two were able to jump in the chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm just gonna close down Twitch and start it over again. It wasn't allowing me to jump into the chat there, so I'm just gonna load it back up again. I don't know if that worked for you guys. Yeah, there I am in the chat. Thank you. All right. So let's get back into this here. If you can please follow, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to let you know I'm here every day from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. This is the Goods Fam on Twitch. I am Philly Good, and we're taking a look at the MPCX and continuing on with Chapter 18, Dynamic Tempo Manipulation from the MPC Bible. So if you'd like to follow along, please load it up and follow along on your MPC at home. Okay, dynamic tempo manipulation. In our looping tutorial, we tuned and time stretched the cowbell loop so it would match the tempo of our existing demo beat sequence. In the MPC, we can also dynamically change the tempo of audio to automatically adapt to tempo changes. Problems when changing sequence tempo. Beat back in chapter 14, which was at a tempo of 90 BPM and consisted of programmed drums, synth plugin tracks, an audio track containing a piano melody, and a cowbell loop, which had to be tuned or time stretched to 90 BPM before it could be used within the sequence. However, time stretching and tuning are not the only options for changing the tempo of an audio performance. We can use warping as well. So we're going to load up, I guess, from chapter 18 folder, dynamic tempo manipulation. I'm going to load up the dynamic tempo.xpj file. And so this loads up the demo beat sequence. Let's see. I don't see the demo beat. Okay, so they adjusted the BPM down to 85.06 BPM, and they used the original 85.06 BPM cowbell loop. So we're going to press play start and listen to the slower version of the beat. Doesn't sound so great, does it? However, if you mute the piano lead audio track, then the sequence sounds fine. What's the problem? So if we mute this piano lead, where's the piano lead? Is it just that piano one? Yeah. The problem is that this audio track was recorded at the original 90 BPM, so cannot be played as is within an 85.06 BPM sequence. However, any track made from single hits and individually sequenced MIDI events such as the drum track, bass line, and sequence plugin parts will happily play at the new tempo. In fact, they'll happily adapt to any tempo. That's one of the big benefits of using MIDI versus audio tracks. Warping audio. We've already discovered the ability to time stretch audio within the sample edit screen. And in fact, as audio tracks are nothing but samples held in memory, we could actually open both our audio tracks and sample edit, hit process, and time stretch them both manually from 90 to 85.06 BPM. This is, for want of a better phrase, static time stretching. Each time you want to change the sequence tempo, you'll have to head back to the sample edit and re-time stretch your poor old audio tracks. It's doable, but it's not ideal. To warp our audio, you should first go to Menu, Preferences, and make sure warping is configured correctly for your MPC. You should see the following under General. So there's a section, it's called Audio Warp and BPM Detect. The audio warp algorithm, basic, least CPU. Audio tracks auto warp is off, and BPM detection range 58 to 195 BPM. Warping is a very CPU intensive function, so by default standalone MPCs use the basic warping algorithm. However, the result of warping results. The payoff is that it uses more CPU, so my advice is to use warping sparingly. Warp algorithms in the MPC software / controller mode. So if you're using the MPC software on your computer, then you also have access to the Elastique Pro warping algorithm. Choose this one if you want the best warping sound. Although, as you might expect, it uses much more CPU, so you might need to use it sparingly. There are, however, also other, less CPU intensive algorithms that you can try instead. There's elastique efficient and elastique mobile. So we're going to select the Pro 10 as the algorithm. Most people would probably leave audio track auto warp to off. You can also change the BPM detection range to suit the type of tempos you tend to work with. By default, it's set to 58 to 195 BPM. For example, most modern electronic music tempos from downbeat to drum and bass. But for example, if you tend to create trap and hip hop beats, you could pick the 68 to 135 BPM option, as this will optimize the algorithm for that smaller tempo range. In main, select audio, edit audio. Where's that? Audio. In main, select audio, edit audio, okay, right there, and choose track 1, piano lead bounced. Okay, track 1, piano lead. Select the pointer tool and tap on the first region to select it. Now tap on the warp button. As you tapped on warp, you might have noticed the region stretched slightly along the timeline. This is the warping adjusting the tempo of your region. As you can see in the circled region above, the audio track is assigned a BPM of 90, which we know is correct as this was the tempo of the sequence when we originally bounced down the audio. Now select the next region and activate warping. Alright. Finally, activate warping on the last region, region 3, and you can horizontal scroll through the waveform using Q-Link 3, which is the second Q-Link from the bottom, column 1. Or you can select the zoom tool and drag the waveform along. But I like the Q-Link option. So now we're gonna hit play start and hear how it sounds when played along with the rest of the beat, which was all playing at 85.06 BPM. So that all sounds pretty awesome. Switching. When an audio sample is warped, it automatically adjusts its tempo to match that of the sequence of the sequence it is currently part of. This means we can change the tempo of our sequence to any BPM we wish, and the audio tracks will now automatically adapt to that tempo. Please jump in the chat if you're here today. I'm trying to get 5 people in the chat. That would be super awesome. Thank you. So this means we can change the tempo of our sequence to any BPM we wish, and the audio tracks will now automatically adapt to that tempo. So the problem is that our old cowbell loop sample, which is located in our cowbell loops drum program, is fixed at 85.06 BPM. So this currently does not adapt to any other tempo automatically. Their version of the warped audio is on sequence 2. Alright, warping in drum programs. We'll select sequence 3 of the current dynamic tempo.xpj project. Here they set the sequence tempo to 95 BPM. We're going to press play start. And as you can hear, the 5.06 BPM cowbell loop on MIDI track 7 cowbell, it's not in sync with the rest of the track. So we're going to use the warping to fix it. In main, hit pad A01, which contains our old cowbell looped sample, and select track 7 cowbell. Now tap the warp samples icon. This takes us directly to the program edit samples. At the bottom of the screen you'll see the warp settings. Tap on the warp button to activate warping on the sample. As you can see, the original cowbell loop is correctly identified as having a BPM of 85.06 BPM. Hit play start, and we'll hear that the cowbell loop now syncs with the current sequence tempo. Now change the sequence tempo to any value you wish, and hear the cowbell adapt to the tempo in real time. Now we're going to check out sequence 4, cowbell warped, where they increase the tempo to 115 BPM. So next up is yet another method of dynamically controlling loop tempo, patched phrase. Patched phrase loops. So we're getting into the last 10 minutes of the stream today. Thank you for tuning in. We'll try and wrap it up with this. The patched phrase loops. The MPC offers a cool alternative to warping in the shape of a patched phrase. A patched phrase is similar to a REX file or Apple loop, in as much as its loop dynamically adjusts to sequence tempo. Okay, so the beauty of patched phrases is they are very easy to create in an MPC thanks to the MPC's threshold chopping feature. So we're going to go to Sample Edit, Chop, and select the old cowbell looped sample. It's already selected for me. And choose the threshold chopping with a threshold of 50 and a min time of 100. Mine's already set there. You can see it right at the bottom here if you need to set yours. So that's just about as perfect as a chopped loop can be. We're going to hit Shift, Convert, and this time from the Convert To field, we're going to select Patched Phrase. Okay. As you can see, the MPC is asking us for the length of our loop. Our cowbell loop is 1 bar long. Count 1, 2, 3, and 4. So set bars to 1 and then hit Do It. At this point, it may not be particularly obvious as to what has happened. So go to Menu, Project, and on that panel, make sure All Samples is selected. Scroll down to the bottom of the list. You'll see a new sample has appeared. Old Cowbell Looped PP. This is your patched phrase sample. Note the PP postfix. In main, select sequence 5, patched phrase. Here they set the tempo to 115 BPM, and on the cowbell track, track 7, they assign their version of the patched phrase cowbell loop, old cowbell patched. So we're going to press play start. The sequence plays with all tracks syncing perfectly at 115 BPM. Now, while the sequence is playing, increase the tempo to 130 BPM. As the tempo changes, even the cowbell loop follows the tempo. In fact, everything follows the tempo changes in real time. Try it at 70 BPM. It still works pretty well on all the tracks. Apart from the tempo changing characteristics, a patched phrase loop is identical to any other looped sample. It's also a standard WAV file, so it can be played in any other audio application, although it'll only tempo match in the MPC. The most important thing to remember when creating a patched phrase file is that you must first chop the breakdown to individual hits. If you leave any regions containing 2 hits, then those 2 hits will always remain at the original tempo of the break, as there's no way for the patched phrase file to realize that there are supposed to be 2 separate controllable hits. This will simply sound very odd when you begin speeding up or slowing down the loop. It's also important that you clean up any endpoint clicks, as these will be audible in the final patched break. So we're getting to the last few minutes of the stream today. Just want to thank you all for tuning in, especially if you were here yesterday with the technical issues. I'm glad that you stuck around and came back today. If you can also please hit the notification bell to let you know that we're here every day from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. However, tomorrow and Sunday, I will not be here. I'm going away with the family for my daughter's birthday. So I'll be back on Monday making a random beat, and then we'll continue on Tuesday with the MPC Bible. and we'll continue where we just left off with Chapter 18, Dynamic Tempo Manipulation. We'll be tuning or pitch shifting a patched phrase. But until then, have fun with your MPCs, and hope you learned a little bit today that you can apply. Please the notification bell, and also follow and subscribe if you can. That'd be amazing. And if you can jump in the chat, my goal for today is to get 5 people in the chat. So if you can, if you're just tuning in last minute, just throw anything in the chat. Super appreciate it. And we'll close out with just a little beat that I made last Sunday, and that'll be it for today. Again, thank you all for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful day. Also, don't forget to check out DJ Whisper. He'll be playing tonight on Twitch, 8 p.m. and tomorrow as well at 8 p.m. He always puts on a great set, and it's always a lot of fun to interact with the people that are in there in the chat. So I would suggest giving him a follow and come party with us all and enjoy your night. Have a couple drinks while watching. It's all good. All right, so I think that's it for today. Just want to say peace out. Have a good one. And we'll raid into somebody else's channel here. See who we can raid to. Oh, there's no one available. Thank you, Andrew, so much for checking it out. Unfortunately, there's nobody that I can raid into right now. I don't see anybody streaming, so we're just gonna end the stream like this for today. Have a good one, folks.